What would you do if you heard a voice outside your window at night, and the longer you listened, the more you realized that it sounded just like you? Hello, I'm Cece with the Crucible Character, and today we have 5 scary Reddit stories for you, each focusing on skinwalkers and wendigos and the likes. Things that want to infiltrate your life, things that won't leave you alone, things that constantly try and get closer and closer until maybe even replacing you. So please, grab a snack, settle in, and try to survive. What would you do if you worked as a park ranger and out of nowhere, people seemingly started to report more instances of someone calling out to them from the woods, calling for help, calling to be rescued, and then being led away only to see a copy of themselves just before vanishing forever? Today's story was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by Throwaway Ranger, and it is entitled, "I'm a park ranger and something is imitating people in my forest." And it starts like this. People assume being a park ranger is peaceful, that I spend my days watching trees sway and helping lost campers find their way back to the parking lot. But if you work long enough in the deep woods, you learn the truth. The forest is full of things that don't want to be understood, and some of them know how to pretend. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just a hiker in trouble. The sun was setting, fog was rolling in, and I was heading back to the truck when a voice echoed between the pines. "Help. Please." A man's voice, weak, pained. I radioed it in and jogged towards the sound, but the closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The voice wasn't moving. It wasn't shifting the way sound normally does between trees. It was stuck in one spot, like a speaker hidden under the leaves. "Help. Please." I swept the flashlight across the clearing, and no one was there. Just an empty patch of grass, untouched. No footprints, no broken branches, no movement. When I stepped forward, the voice repeated. Same tone, same pitch, same exact pause between the words. Like a recording. My stomach dropped. I backed away slowly and returned to the station without saying a word. I wanted to believe it was just the wind, or a radio glitch, or my brain playing tricks on me, but it wasn't the last time I heard it. A week later, a pair of hikers came into the station, pale and shaking. They claimed someone had followed them near the ridge, someone who looked like the boyfriend. Not similar to them. Mistake. Not similar to him. Not someone wearing the same clothes. Someone who looked exactly like him. Except, according to the girlfriend, the copy stood perfectly still, even when they yelled at it. And when it finally moved, its head turned before its body did. I wrote up the report. My supervisor read it, placed the paperwork face down on her desk, and said, "Leave it out of the official log." That's when I realized all the other rangers knew something that I didn't. The silence wasn't ignorance, it was fear. I tried to shake it off until the day we responded to a missing persons alert. My partner Mason and I went to go check it out. A teenager had wandered from a campsite and hadn't returned. We split up to cover more ground. I was following a creek upstream when Mason's voice crackled through the radio. "Found something. Need you over here." His voice sounded strained, like he was winded. I turned towards the sound of his direction, and then I heard Mason's voice again from the opposite direction. "Hey, over here." I froze. Both voices were identical. Same tone, same cadence, same subtle rasp Mason had from years of smoke exposure. "Mason?" I said into the radio. "Which side are you on?" The first voice answered from the trees. "Here, I found some tracks." The second one whispered, closer now, almost behind me. "Come here." I should have radioed it in. I should have called backup, but something primal in me decided to run, quietly, steadily, never looking back. I followed the creek until I reached the trailhead again. 10 minutes later, real Mason walked out of the opposite direction, pale and drenched in sweat. When he saw me, we both just stopped. Neither of us had called the other. Neither of us had actually called the other. Neither of us had originally used the radio. Neither of us had spoken in the woods. We didn't talk during the drive back to the station. That night, Mason went home early. The next morning, he didn't show up for shift. We sent someone to check his house, but his truck was gone. His radio was sitting on the counter. His gun locker was open, but he was gone. We organized a search. During the sweep, one of the rookies claimed he saw Mason standing between the trees, motionless, staring at him. But when we ran to the spot, the space was empty. No footprints, no indent in the dirt, nothing. As the days went on, the forest felt wrong in a way I can't explain. Like the trees were leaning in, like the air was listening. 3 nights after Mason's disappearance, as I locked up the station, I heard someone call my name from the trailhead. Ranger? My blood turned to ice. The voice was Mason's. I stepped backwards, shaking my head. Ranger, come here. Soft, urgent, and familiar. The exact tone he used when we would find lost children. Except it was coming from the pitch-black woods. I didn't answer. I locked the door and went to my truck. As I climbed in, the voice came again, this time from behind the vehicle. Come here. I drove off without looking back. Since then, hikers keep reporting the same thing. Someone calling their name from between the trees. Someone repeating phrases in the voice of their friend or partner. Someone who looks almost right, but not quite human. The supervisors don't investigate. The older rangers keep their heads down. The rookies quit within months. And the woods keep imitating us. I still patrol. Someone has to do it. But I don't go near the ridge anymore. I don't respond when I hear voices, and I don't chase any shadows. And when I see someone standing too still between the pines, I don't go anywhere near it. Not anymore. Because whatever those things are, they're getting better at copying us. And last night, when I locked the station, I heard my own voice calling from the trees. Hey, can you help me? And it sounded exactly like me, down to the breath, down to the fear, down to the way I screamed Mason's name the day he vanished. I didn't turn around, I just ran. And I don't know how much longer I'll survive out there. Not when the forest knows exactly what I sound like. The end. I like that a lot. I know that I say that often, but a lot of these Reddit stories are really good. One of the things I thought of kind of that whole time is almost like a unspoken kind of peace treaty of sorts. I know that it doesn't really feel like it, but it kind of reminds me of, if you've seen any of the Marvel movies, there's the alien people that are shapeshifters and kind of have infiltrated a lot of the world. And there's a group of them that are pretty good. But the larger populace doesn't know they exist. It's just kind of this splinter cell of the government, and then this splinter cell of these good aliens, to put it really simply. But in their efforts to work together, they end up doing a lot. And it protects and it goes to do a lot that people don't even understand is happening around them. Lots of crazy things. And so I think, in a way, having this kind of ranger station that has this alternate point or alternate purpose of keeping these things in check and not really reporting on it as to drum up too much attention, or maybe it's almost like a secret club of sorts, or almost like a secret society of people who've been given this responsibility to take after the woods, and not only that, but make sure that these things aren't discovered, because that might do more damage than just letting it be as is. I think that's a cool thought to think about. That's something I was definitely thinking about during this story. What were you all thinking about during the story? Please let me know. I think if I was in this situation, something that we could have done differently is, well, one, you could take a phone with you and record stuff. And I would probably have some type of a dead man switch on my computer to release a lot of the footage of the weird stuff that I had seen. That way, if I ever did die, then it would all just go out. Something where it basically, you just set up a software where if you didn't hit the button once a week, it would just release it all. That's not terribly hard to set up. And then I think as well, I mean, he's a ranger, right? So just making sure you have your gun on you, making sure you're adequately prepared for situations, making sure that you have some snacks on you in case you need to sprint and you can't take your car. I think as well, making sure to set up kind of code phrases with those who you love, just in case. I know that at least near where I live in the United States, there was recently a lot of people who would kind of scam call on the phone, and then all they would need to know is who you are. And so they would scam call you a bit, and then just from the audio sample they were able to gather on you, they would call your parents, and they'd use AI to kind of resynthesize the sample of your voice to make it sound like you were a hostage, and that they would only let you go if your parents were able to pay the ransomers enough money in time. Otherwise, you'd die. And then you'd end up coming home from school or from work or whatever just fine, didn't know anything had happened, and your parents had just, lost 5 or 10 grand. So I think a great thing to do in this situation is kind of preemptively to the ones you love, just in case, I'd say have some kind of a code phrase, something that you say, and then they can respond to it that seems kind of unsuspicious, so that you could just kind of sprinkle it in a conversation, and anybody who wouldn't know. I tried to make one with my siblings, and I know that my family has one as well as my friends, just in case. I'm not saying I know that there are skinwalkers out there, but I'm not sure that there aren't. And so for that, I think it's a great idea to have something like that in place. Now, with that, what is a lesson that we can learn from this story? Before I say, I'd love for y'all to take a moment and maybe comment down below what you think. Wrapping up today's video, I think that today's lesson from this story should be, it's good to take responsibility, and it's good to look out for everyone, and it's good to be a part of this cool little thing that's protecting everybody from these skinwalkers or whatever else. But at the end of the day, a lot of the responsibility we take in our lives isn't ours to take. A lot of the responsibility we take for those around us isn't ours to take. And that's not to say that it's all bad. That's not to say be a lazy bum and don't take any responsibility your whole life. But what I am saying is you can only do what you can do. Let go of the things you can't do. Be happy with what you can do. Take responsibility. Learn. Be better. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep growing. It's a circle. But if you take on too much all at once, you kind of just end up doing everything really crummy and not well at anything. So with that, please, maybe take a moment to reflect and understand the responsibility or maybe the commitments that you've taken on. And understand or try and think about, should you have all of that? Should you maybe let some of it go permanently? Should you maybe let some of it go temporarily to refocus? Are you still headed in the direction you want to? Every day is either a step forward or a step backwards, and it's your choice. Don't forget that. What would you do if late one night you heard your mother's voice coming from outside your window, begging you to be let inside? Today's story is entitled, My Family Has Been Stalked by Something in the Woods for Years, and it was uploaded to the r/no-sleep subreddit by Throwaway Tribal. And it starts like this. My family taught me early that the woods weren't just woods. We lived far from town, where the trees pressed in close and the darkness felt heavy. My grandparents were the ones who made the rules. They didn't explain much. They just made us follow them. Don't whistle at night. Don't answer voices from outside. And if you hear someone walking around the house after dark, stay inside, no matter who it sounds like. I thought they were just stories to scare kids. I stopped believing them when I was 9. That was when I first saw it. I woke up to tapping at my bedroom window, soft, slow, and polite. like someone knocking on a door instead of glass. I was alone in my room, staring at the ceiling when the tapping happened. Again. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't sit up. I didn't breathe. I just turned my eyes towards the window. Something tall stood outside. It was too tall. Taller than my father. Taller than any normal person. Its body was thin and wrong, stretched like it didn't fit the shape it was pretending to wear. The moonlight showed me its face. It almost looked human. Almost. The eyes were too dark. The mouth was just a little too wide, and it wasn't blinking. We stared at each other. It didn't move. I didn't move. Finally, it lifted one hand and tapped again. Tap, tap, tap. I hid under my blanket and stayed there until morning. When I told my grandfather what I saw, he didn't even look surprised. He just said, "Don't look at it next time." That was it. Over the years, it started appearing more often, always just out of reach, always watching. Sometimes behind trees, sometimes standing by the fence, never running, never walking, just appearing. Then, it started using voices. The first voice it copied was my uncle's. I was outside one afternoon when I heard him behind me. "Hey, come help me real quick." I turned around. No one was there. The voice came again, this time from the opposite side of the yard. "Come here." My stomach dropped. I walked slowly towards the house, and I didn't turn back again. The voice never followed. It just laughed. I didn't recognize that sound as human until years later. When I was 15, it came closer than it had ever had before. It was late. Everyone in the house was asleep. I was in the kitchen getting water when I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy, and dragging slightly. Then came a knock. 3 soft taps. I froze. "Baby?" A voice called from outside. It was my mom. But my mom was asleep in the next room. "Baby, let me in," the voice said, perfectly gentle. "It's cold." I stood there, shaking and not moving. Another knock. "Why won't you open up the door?" the voice asked, sounding hurt now. "It's me." The handle started to turn. Not violently, not trying to break in, just testing. I stepped back slowly. My grandfather emerged from the hallway, eyes wide, and put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say a word, he just shook his head once. The voice changed. It deepened. It lost the softness. "You're rude," it said. "We've been watching you." The doorknob stopped moving. Footsteps slowly moved away from the porch. My grandfather didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. Years passed, but it never left. It just got closer and closer. Sometimes it stood by the windows. Sometimes it circled the house. Sometimes it mimicked the people we loved. Once, it copied my own voice and called to my little cousin from the tree line. If my aunt hadn't grabbed him, he would have walked right into the woods, and it would have taken him. Now, I live far away, far from the woods, far from that house. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a tapping on my apartment window, even though I live on the 3rd floor. Tap, tap, tap. And I hear a familiar voice, soft and patient. "Let me in." I don't move, I don't breathe, and I never answer. Because I know it didn't stop watching. It just learned where I went. The end. That was a pretty good story. I think it was definitely short, but I definitely think that even in short stories you can learn a lot. I think if there's anything different that could be done in this story, I don't think there is, but you'll have to let me know down below. I think for the most part, the protagonist here was smart. They listened to the family, and they understood that something was serious. about this creature. They shouldn't mess around with it, that they shouldn't listen to it, that they shouldn't respond to it, that they definitely shouldn't open the door or the window. But I think that just goes to show you, and I think kind of transitioning into the lesson that I gleaned from this story, is that I think a lot of times our families have our best interests in mind. Now, does that mean that they're perfect? No, absolutely not. But it does mean that they love us, hopefully, most of the time. And they want us to be happy. And I think there's a lot of forces in the world, especially now, that are trying to break that up. They're trying to break up families, that are trying to push people apart and isolate them and make them feel alone. Whether you want to say that that's spiritual forces or literal forces, I believe it's a little bit of both. But, truly, who are the people that are going to be there for our entire lives and more? That's just going to be our family. Those are just about the only people that ideally we can trust in the long run. So, with that being said, do you feel like you can trust your family? Do you feel like something might have been trying to get you isolated, like the creature in this story? Has there ever been a time when listening to them saved your bum? Let me know. I really do appreciate all the comments, and I read them, and I do respond to all of them. What would you do if you noticed that every night you were being watched by something from the forest? Noticing each night that it wasn't only closer to your window, but also looked and moved more like you do. The title of today's video is The Thing in the Woods That Walked Like a Man, and it was uploaded to the r/no-sleep subreddit by Throwaway Woodsman. And it starts like this. It started the same way every night, just standing there. At first, I thought it was a person. We live far from town, backed up to miles of forests. Hunters sometimes wander close, lost hikers, people looking for shortcuts. That's what I told myself, but people don't stand that still. The first time I saw it, it was just inside the tree line. Tall, dark against the shadows, not moving, not shifting weight, not breathing, just standing, staring directly at my house. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds before it suddenly stepped back and vanished into the trees. I slept fine that night. The next night, it was there again. Same place, same posture, same silence. But this time, when I stared at it, it tilted its head slowly. Too slowly for a normal neck, like it was studying me. After that, it turned and walked away, but it didn't walk like a person. Its legs bent strangely, like it didn't know where the joints were supposed to go. Each step looked practiced, thought out, wrong. It came back the next night, and the one after that. Every time it stood a little closer. My dog noticed before I did. He refused to go outside at night, just stood in the doorway, hackles raised, a low growling vibrating in his chest. When I looked toward the woods, I saw it, closer. Still not moving, just watching. That's when I realized something was wrong. Not dangerous, wrong. The fourth night, it lifted a hand slowly, carefully, and waved. The motion was stiff, too straight, like it was copying something it had seen once. I forced myself to wave back. It stopped. Then it lifted both hands and tried to copy me. The timing was off. The angles were wrong. But it was close enough to make my stomach drop. The fifth night, it smiled. At least it tried to. Its mouth pulled back way too far, too wide, like it had stretched the skin to remember how a human smile works. Its teeth were visible even in the dark, all of them. Its eyes never even blinked. The sixth night, it stepped out of the trees, fully out now, no shadows to hide in. The porch light hit it clearly, and I finally saw its shape. Too tall, too thin, arms hanging slightly too low, shoulders hunched like it wasn't comfortable holding itself upright. It tried to stand like I did. It failed. Its footsteps sounded wet against the grass. Behind me, my dog whimpered. Then it spoke. Not a word, just a sound. A rough, broken attempt at breath forced through a throat that didn't know what breath was for. It studied me while it did this, studied how I breathed. The 7th night, it was halfway across the yard. It didn't watch the house anymore. It watched me. Every tiny movement, every blink, every shift of weight, its head jerked at strange angles, trying to copy how I held mine. It lifted its arms, testing the joints, flexing fingers that looked like they didn't fit right. The 8th night, it walked up to the porch. It didn't touch the door. It just stood there, inches away from the wood, and whispered. Not a real word. Not a sound I even recognized, just air passing through a mouth that was learning. The 9th night, I woke up to footsteps directly outside my bedroom window, slow, measured, right up to the glass. The curtain shifted slightly from my breath as I froze in bed. My heart was so loud, I was sure it could hear it. Then I heard my own voice from outside. Hello? It wasn't perfect, but it was close. Closer than it should have been. I didn't answer. I didn't move. Eventually, it walked away. By morning, I found footprints in the dirt, bare, wrongly shaped, too long, too narrow. It hasn't left. It doesn't even hide anymore. Now it just stands at the edge of my yard in broad daylight, practicing, watching how I walk, how I talk, how I stand. I don't think it wants to kill me. I don't even think it wants to hurt me. I think it wants to replace me. And the worst part, it's getting better every single night. The end. I really like the stories where there is something otherworldly or even just some form of a cryptid that tries to replace people. I think it just goes to show you that on the one hand, it's very feasible that if there is something out there that wanted to copy us, it wouldn't have a very hard time. But at the same time, for some reason, we're just pretty good at pointing that out. We're pretty good at seeing when people aren't quite right. Just like how he said in the story, although he was comparing it to himself specifically, in general, he could tell that the feet shape was wrong. He could tell that the thing wasn't quite right just by the way it moved its neck. All these kind of indicators he saw very early on to know that it wasn't just some lost hiker or something else. So I think that on the one hand, while it is a possibility, and it is a scary possibility, I think we can take comfort in that if we see it, hopefully on day 1 instead of day 10, we'd have a pretty good chance. Something I think that I guess the protagonist could have done differently in this story is, one, why the heck are you waiting so long to do something about it? This thing has been copying you, and you can very visibly see that it's getting better, and it's getting more aggressive in how it's doing it. So why are you just still standing around, waiting for something to happen? Why are you still waiting around, waiting for this monster to take your place and kill you? I mean, if you are sure that it was a monster and not a person, I don't think there's any kind of moral implication against killing it, or at least, trying to get the jump on it and tying it up and seeing what it wants, or trying to, poke at it a little first, or turn it into the government or something. I'm sure that, with how many movies we've seen, government likes to dissect stuff they don't understand, right? I think those are all good points, but I think just doing nothing and pretending like nothing is happening, especially because it doesn't describe that the protagonist has anyone that they live with. That's kind of a scary thought, that they're just, oh yeah, there's something watching me outside, I'm just going to go to bed now. Good night. I don't think that's very, well in the survival instincts area. Now, as for a lesson that we can learn from this, I think that a lot of times in our lives, we do things, and for whatever reason, good or bad, we have a reason for doing the things that we do. We don't go into doing something thinking it's stupid and that there's no positive benefit for doing it, right? Everything we do is at least somewhat calculated. It's at least somewhat thought through. And we have justifications for the things that we do. If we didn't, we wouldn't do them. That's just, that's clear. But Sometimes we receive the reward for doing something, and we don't like that reward. But we don't really have anyone else to blame but ourselves. In the story, the person, they're kind of pushing over a domino, and they're not just like pushing over one domino, they're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And a lot of the times what we don't even realize is that waiting, or inaction, is an action. Because whether we like it or not, inaction still passes time. It still lets this enemy, this antagonist, get closer, get stronger, get more close to copying. So, what I think is a great takeaway from this story is, are you on the path that you want to be on? And not only that, but are you going to wake up one day and say, dang, how did I end up with this? When in reality, you've been working for whatever you end up with this whole time. Are you getting what you want? And if not, what are you going to get based on your actions right now? I think those are some great things to ponder on. What would you do if you inherited some land only to realize the longer you stay there, that if you don't follow the rules that came with the house, you die? Today's story is entitled, My Property Isn't Normal, and it was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by archived account. And it starts like this. When my grandmother died, she left me her land. It wasn't just a house, it was acres of fenced fields, tree lines that felt too thick, and space that felt watched. I thought I was inheriting peaceful isolation. What I actually inherited was a list. It was taped to the refrigerator, yellowed and handwritten. Each rule written like she expected me to need it. Do not go outside after dark. If you see someone in the field, do not wave. If something stands still too long, go inside immediately. Never follow voices. If you see it smiling, leave the room. At first I laughed. I figured she was eccentric, old, lonely, and creative. I stopped laughing after the third night. I was inside watching TV when my motion light flicked on. Bright white light filled the field outside my living room window. I glanced out without thinking. Someone was standing there. Middle of the field, dead center. Arms hanging at its sides. Feet perfectly aligned, just standing there. It looked like a man at first glance. Tall and slim, wearing something too dark to be made out clearly. But it wasn't moving. Not shifting. Wait, not breathing. Just watching my house. I remembered the list. If you see someone in the field, do not wave. I backed away from the window. The next night, it was still there. Same position, same distance, same posture. Not closer, not further. Like it was testing whether I'd look. The third night, it tilted its head at me. That's when I realized something was fundamentally wrong. Humans don't tilt their heads that far. The angle was impossible. Like the neck wasn't built to do that, but it forced itself to do it anyway. I went inside and locked the door. The rules started to feel more important after that. A week later, I started hearing knocking on the back side of the house, soft and slow. 3 taps. I didn't answer. The voice came next. Mistake to ignore guests. The voice was wrong. Flat, like it heard people talk, but it didn't understand what tone was. I remembered another rule. Never follow voices. So I stayed still. The thing walked along the side of the house, footsteps that sounded wet, dragging slightly. Then, it stopped under my bedroom window. It didn't knock this time. It just stood there, breathing, like it was learning how to do so. Every night after that, it came closer. It stopped standing in the field and started standing by the fence, then by the shed, then just beyond the porch. It never touched the house, not directly. It just stared. Practiced. One night, it waved. The movement was stiff, elbow bending wrong, fingers crooked in strange angles. Another night, it smiled. The skin stretched too tight across its face. The smile kept going past where a normal face would stop, teeth showing in strange places. I followed the rules. I always followed the rules. Until the night I heard my own voice from outside. "Hey, open the door." It wasn't a perfect copy, but it was close enough to make my stomach drop. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The footsteps circled the house slowly, testing, learning, practicing. That was the night I understood the last rule my grandmother wrote. It was at the very bottom of the list, faded, almost erased. The land doesn't belong to you. You just live on it. I don't plan on selling it. I don't plan on leaving, because I think that's what it wants. I think it wants me to run, to slip, to make a mistake. So, I stay inside at night. I don't answer the voices. I don't wave. And when I see it standing perfectly still out in the field, I don't look at it. Not anymore. Because it isn't just watching. It's waiting. And one day, it's going to get close enough to try the door. And I don't think the rules will save me then. Because they weren't meant to save me forever. The end. I really like that story. I like the Skinwalker stories. I like how there's kind of a common narrative to all of them. I think surprisingly though, in almost all of them where the Skinwalkers are approaching the house, the person is just surprisingly calm. And it's kind of weird to think about. I think if I saw some creature that I could almost certainly very quickly identify as a Skinwalker or something like that, stalking my house, stalking me, looking at me from out the window, especially at night, I would not be this calm 10 days in, 2 weeks in, 3 months in, whatever it is. No. I'm getting out of there. I definitely wouldn't sell the property because, like the protagonist said, it might just, fall into the hands of someone less capable who would get got right away. Or worst case scenario, if the thing gets someone, maybe it learns more. Maybe it learns so much that it is able to become this perfect chameleon killer that can no longer be detected because it has gathered so much material. That would be even worse, objectively. Now again, if you're moving out to the middle of nowhere on a large property, so large that, the neighbors can't see this weirdo standing in the field, you should probably buy a gun, and you should probably be willing to defend yourself. At this point, I would probably, this one doesn't seem like it is in the daytime. It seems more towards the afternoon or night, or in the evening. And I think that it would be a much better idea at that point to probably put up a little fence around the house, maybe electrify it, maybe dig some punji traps, get some stuff going, so that in the event that it decides to not be so nice, you're a little bit more prepared. I think that could also be a great gauge as to its abilities. If you put up a 7-foot tall fence with nowhere to grab on and it just magically jumps over it or whatever, well, now you know it can do that, right? If you put a whole bunch of traps and it knows to dodge certain parts of the ground where there's the traps, you know what abilities it has, right? But just saying, oh yes, my glass windows should save me, that's not the greatest idea, I don't think. So what could we have done differently? Anything. We could have done something. I think, again, this is a case of someone just not doing anything. And I think, just as they put in the end, those rules are not going to save them forever. One day the creature is going to work up the gusto to just come and take you out. Or, who knows what else. Maybe it just wants to capture you and eat little bits off of you forever and ever, till you're dead. That is definitely a worse fate than just dying right away. So, with that, what would you do if you owned a house like this, if you inherited a property, and you were visited by something every night? Would you fortify? Would you get out of there? Would you sell the place? Would you try and hunt it? What would you do? What would you do differently than what I said? I think, kind of moving into the final part of the analysis, the lesson that we can learn from this. One, very clear one, rules are often there to protect you. We've said that before with some of the Wendigo ones. But I think, again, I think we are too comfortable in our lives. I think we are too willing to just sit around and wait for people to come save us. I think at the end of the day, if there is something like this, or if you want to think about it, there will be a time in each person's life where they have to make the decision to save themselves or keep waiting for someone to save them. And it's not going to be terribly often that someone comes and bails you out. Now, with that being said, there is going to be a time when you have to choose to stand up and you have to choose to save yourself. Now, I'm not saying that you can't pray. I'm not saying that you can't call on your friends or your family. But what I am saying is there really, truly will be a time when the fight or flight is right in front of you. And if you don't choose to save yourself, you are just going to get wrecked. And just like in the story, there will be something easing its way up on you, closer and closer and closer. And if you don't choose to save yourself, no one will. And the sooner you understand that, the better. The more capable you'll be. The more assertive you'll be to do things in your life. Because once you realize that you have the power to save yourself, you will want to keep going. You will want to keep growing in all of your capacities. You won't want to just sit around anymore. You won't want to just consume all day long. The content machine, the food, whatever else. You'll want to go do something and be something. Because you'll understand just how much you're really capable of. So wrapping it all together, have you asked yourself, have you reflected on it recently, what are you capable of? Has there ever been a time where you needed to save yourself? Please, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What would you do if you lived out in the middle of nowhere, and at night, tall, shadowy figures moved closer and closer to your house, but only while you weren't looking? Hello, I'm Cece with the Crucible of Character, and welcome back for another scary Reddit story. Once again, thank you all so much for the recent support I've gotten on my videos with the new subscribers and the load of likes and comments. I really do appreciate it. I am trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you liked today's video, make sure to like, write me your comments down below, and consider subscribing. Now without further ado, today's story is entitled, I Live on a Dead Road, and it was posted to the r/no sleep subreddit by Dead End Account, and it starts like this. I live on a road no one uses. Even during the day it feels abandoned. Cracked asphalt, faded lane lines, a single street light that flickers more often than it works. At night, it feels dead. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a broken lamp casting weird shadows, but then it lifted its head. There was something standing directly beneath the streetlight, far down the road, perfectly still. Just far enough that I couldn't make out any details, only the outline, tall, thin, and wrong. It didn't move the first night, or the second. It just stood there, watching my house. The third night, it shifted, just slightly. Its head tilted, not towards me, towards the road, like it heard something that I couldn't. The fourth night, it was closer. I could tell just by the way its outline filled the light. It didn't walk. It didn't transition between positions. It just existed closer. My dog noticed before I told myself it was real. He started whining at the door at night, growling softly when the light flickered on. When I checked the street, it was always there, still, and waiting. The fifth night, it lifted one arm, slowly and carefully, like it was moving underwater. It held its hand in the air for a long time, then let it fall. The sixth night, it did it again, but faster. The seventh night, it lifted both arms and tried to balance. I realized then it wasn't waving. It was practicing, The 8th night it smiled. I couldn't see its mouth clearly, but the shape of its face definitely changed. Stretched. Unnatural looking. The 9th night, it stepped forward. Not a human step, a dragged imitation of one. Like it had watched how legs work, but didn't know why. Its knees bent wrong. It just wasn't right. Its posture sagged, like it didn't belong in gravity. Still, it was closer. The 10th night, it was halfway down the road. The street light buzzed violently above it, flickering like it wanted to warn me. That night I heard it breathe. Faint, wet, and too close to the glass. I didn't even sleep. On the 11th night, it walked up to my driveway. Didn't touch the mailbox. Didn't touch the fence. Just stood there, perfectly still. Listening. Learning. Then, in a voice so quiet I thought I had imagined it. Hello? It was my voice. Not perfect, but close enough to make my stomach turn. The 12th night, it was on the sidewalk, staring at the door. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't move. I just sat on the floor and held my breath. It stayed there for hours, practicing, breathing, whispering. On the 13th night, I didn't check the window. I didn't look, because when I woke up that morning, there were footprints on my porch. They were bare, too long, too narrow, and facing the door. I still live here today. I still live here. I don't plan on leaving, but I know it wants me to leave. It wants the house. It wants something to do with this property and this space. It wants to know what it feels like to live in skin. And one night, I know it's going to get the door open. Not by breaking it, not by forcing it in, but by becoming good enough at being me that I'll let it in. The end. Well, that was an interesting kind of little twist there at the end. It almost reminds me of that movie Annihilation, with the scene when there's kind of like the metallic goo monster that is perfectly mirroring the main protagonist, and slowly, as it's mirroring her, it kind of takes on more and more of the details of her until they're completely indistinguishable. And then in the end, it is somewhat left up to your interpretation as to whether or not who we saw come out was actually her, or whether she was the one that died and the replicant was the one that replaced her. That's a super interesting way of thinking about it. I know that, psychologically speaking, when you mirror someone for long enough, you can then intentionally change how they behave. Like, if you see someone do something with their body, like they cross their arms or their legs or whatever else, and you just keep following what they do and following their lead, and then one of the times before they shift, you shift the way you're sitting first, because you've been copying them, they will unconsciously start to copy you. And the same goes for kind of leading conversations. So it's interesting to me in a way to think that that might be possible for a skinwalker, that it mirrors you for so long that you kind of lose your grip on even wanting to be a separate entity, and you just let it in. It's definitely a super cool way of looking at it, and a different kind of spin on the skinwalker stories than we're used to. Again, talking about things that you could do differently in this situation, I think that, just similar to the past few stories, don't hang out if you know something's like this. You could leave the house, and it wouldn't be able to learn anything more from you. You could go get a gun and try and scare it off. You could build a really big fence so that it couldn't get up to your door. Whatever. But just do something. Do anything. Any kind of skinwalkers or wendigos, I'm not entirely sure on their weaknesses. But I do know that if you were to get in a car and drive full speed away in the middle of the daytime when it's not there, you would probably be fine from this thing. With that being said, what do you think the lesson from today's story would be? Now, the point of this channel is to try and teach you all how to look for the point of stories, to try and look for the lesson. It's to try and teach you to be proactive about looking for it, so that entertainment isn't just solely entertainment, but it's bettering you. So please, if you have thought of something, let me know down below before I tell you what I think. And with that, kind of wrapping up, the lesson that I pulled from today's story is be your own person. Don't be a sheep. What I mean by that is, again, kind of going back to this mirroring that other things can do. There's a lot of pressure in our world today to act a certain way, or to do certain things, or to be a certain thing, based solely upon the fact that a large group or the mass is doing it. But we need to stop and ask ourselves, is that really what we want? Is that actually heading in a good direction? Or not? I think if we're all able to take a minute to reflect, to think about, well, are we being a sheep? Or are we able to make our own path? I think we have a lot to learn about that. I think we have a lot of pressure on us that we don't even realize is there, that if we just took a moment to think about, we could escape. With all that being said, let me know your thoughts down below. Did we get the same lesson? What would you have done in this situation? And with that, it brings us to the end of today's video. I'm glad you survived. Hopefully, you ended up learning something. And if you did, or you had any thoughts, or you liked anything that I did in the video, please let me know down in the comments below. I really appreciate all the recent support that my channel's gotten, and I really appreciate all of the new faces and all of the new subscribers. Hopefully, if you enjoyed today's video and you aren't already subscribed, you subscribe. My goal is to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year, and I would absolutely love to have your help in doing so. And with that, I hope you all mistake. And with that, once again, I'm CC with the Crucible of Character. Mistake. And with that, thank you all again. I'm CC with the Crucible of Character. I love you all. I'll see you Monday.